Hey, real quick before we start the podcast, if you have listened to more than one episode, can you do me a favor and rate and review the show? Now, I'm not big on asking for favors, but we really want to get this podcast listed in the top of all health and fitness podcasts, not just the fitness category. This will take you less than a minute, and if you could do that, that would make us friends forever. And since we refuse all sponsors on the show, this will be my only ask rather than telling you to go check out some supplement or product we don't actually believe in, like every other podcast out there. So please rate and review. Okay, that's it. To the podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Jerred Moon here with Joe Courtney. What's up, Joe?
How's it going, man?
It's going fantastic. We're going to get into some stuff today, a lot of different things. So the study that we are going over is a systematic review and meta-analysis on resistance training versus plyometric training for getting better at running, either better running economy or time trial performance. So that's the study we're going to be covering. But first, I want to jump into a few announcements for the day, just because I know a majority of our listeners are also Garage Gym Athlete subscribers, meaning that you follow our programming and you're part of the community, and you might have some questions about things that are going on right now. And so I'm going to go over a few of those. The first one being Daily Over Decades Challenge. So I want to make sure that everybody knows we did not forget about this. So if you did not know, all of last year, we did a challenge called the Daily Over Decades Challenge, and it lasted the entire year of 2022, and there are prizes associated with it. And you have not missed anything. We have had a couple of hiccups on the back end of our stuff with emailing people out, but all of that will be resolved within, honestly, 7 days of this podcast publishing. So you should have been contacted and, winner selected, all those kind of things within the next week. You should expect that is coming. We did not forget. We would not start a challenge and not fulfill on our promise. That's not something that we would do. We have just had a couple hiccups to the start of 2023 with some technical stuff. So I wanted to let you know. And also, a better place to get updated about things like this moving forward, which is also the second part of my announcement, is the new community. So we have officially launched a new community for Garage Gym Athlete. We are moving away from Facebook groups and moving to a platform called Circle. And so if you have not been added, you are a part of this community, you have not been added, the best thing that you can do is check your email. One, because we've already emailed it out, and there's an invitation link in there for you to join. That's option one. Option two, if you are a part of the Facebook group, you can go into our Garage Gym Athlete Facebook group, find the link to join, or last case, trying not to overwhelm support, email support@garagegymathlete.com, and we will send you the link to have you join the community. So any of those options, because there are plenty of people who have already joined. They did everything that they're supposed to and they're in, but I'm still getting a good amount of requests either on Facebook or via email of people who have not been invited. They didn't get the invitation. They did not see it. And I want to make sure that you get in the new community, because the new community is going to be a little bit different than our Facebook community. Our Facebook community was just kind of, it existed, plain and simple. It was a great place for us to go, people to interact, a great place for us to go make announcements and for people to interact. But I want this new community to be a little bit different. So we're getting all people in, getting you used to the app, but then I'm going to be hosting live trainings in there. I want education to be a bigger piece of this community. And Facebook just was not conducive to that. It's very they will show you a post based off of popularity, whether or not you think about it, you would like it, an algorithm. I want to move away from all that crap. If you want to be a part of the Garage Gym Athlete community and you want to know what we're doing and when we're doing it, and not whether or not Facebook wants to show you a inflammatory political post today or something Garage Gym Athlete posted, I don't have to worry about those things. We can just all take care of that in the Garage Gym Athlete community. So I want to make sure that you are there. So all that to say, a lot happening moving forward and for the rest of this year with live trainings, education, and interacting with the group. So make sure that you have your invitation. And if you haven't, do one of those 3 things I said to make sure that you get the invitation. And is there anything you wanted to hit on, Joe, that had to do with the community that people should know?
Well, option 4, there are links in the Team Builder app as well that are posted on workout days that people can also see.
Yeah, I forgot we did that.
So another option there. And yeah, Circle's been great. It's much more organized so that, if you just want to go in there and just talk about your track and nutrition, then you can just opt into those threads and you'll only see those, but you can still pop into the other threads. There's been a ton of engagement so far, and it seems like there are a lot of people that have just been waiting to get off Facebook and to
Yeah.
just get on Circle. So there is an app for it as well. There's a bunch of resources. I made a page in Circle that will give you the rundown of the community. There's a video completely breaking down how the community works and where to download the app and all that stuff. So it's pretty user friendly too for the most part.
I've actually been pretty surprised about how many people are happy that we're like on Circle and no longer on Facebook, because Facebook, these platforms are built to be addictive, and you can hop on to like, hey, I wanted to see what my coach is saying in Garage Gym Athlete, and the next thing you know, you're arguing with someone about a new policy or like whatever the hell happens on Facebook. That's why I don't get on Facebook pretty much at all anymore. And so it's awesome that people are moving over. I didn't know if that was going to be good for us or bad for us, but I also know that the addictive nature of Facebook, while I don't think it's good for a human being, it is good for having your community on there, because it's already in everybody's like daily habitual thing, is like you get on your phone, you check Facebook, or you check it on your computer, your laptop, and then you might be able to see what's going on with the Garage Gym Athlete community at the same time. So that's the only con to this new community app, is like you have to voluntarily like go there, check it, put it in your cross check for the day to make sure that you're going. And you can you can have as many or as few notifications as you want. My recommendation would be to have some notifications on. Like for me, um, I have a good amount of notifications on. So if someone's like replying to my post or like whatever, I would definitely have some of those on. My default for anything is all notifications off. Do not notify me about anything ever. But I didn't do that with this community because it's just like I want to make sure I know who's in there, what people are doing. I don't want to forget about it. And I want you guys to be the same way. So go in there, mess with your notification settings. I think by default, it's pretty aggressive, but you can go in there and change like what you want to see and when you want to see it. And I do recommend leaving some of those on either in the app notifications or get an email or whatever works best for you. But those are kind of my recommendations on the app.
Yeah.
And then other things. So 2023 for us, a big mission is just simplify, simplify, simplify. So step one of that is the community, and step two is a new training app. This is not like an official announcement, but we are playing around with that in the community. We'll be doing a beta test of new training apps for Garage Gym Athlete that we might use this year. This is very much beta test, just testing it out, seeing if we want to make a switch or do we want to stay where we're at with Team Builder. But we're throwing these ideas around to try and make things easier, not only on the coaching side, but primarily on the athlete side. So you guys can do things, um, more with less manual work on our end. So like if you want a track change, I want that to be able to be a clear process that you could do same day without a coach having to intervene. And so we're working on just small things like that. And that's the reason for the move. But if you want to be a part of it, again, go to the community. We're looking for beta testers there. We already have a lot of people interested. And like I said, education is going to be a big part of this community. I'll be doing pretty frequent live streams about this, that, or the other. Just whatever I feel like covering, to be honest. I want to do one on fat burning coming up. So you'll see that in the community because I've seen a lot of chatter on that, like amongst fitness professionals. And I still think people are missing the point. They're missing the point when they're talking about whether or not you're burning fat. And I could just go into it right now. I want to, because it upsets me, but they're missing the point. And I'm going to be going live to talk about that in the new Garage Gym Athlete community. So that's it on that. A lot of updates, a lot of announcements today. I think we'll do some personal updates at the end of the podcast, but let's get into this study. So the actual name of the study: Heavy Resistance Training versus Plyometric Training for Improving Running Economy and Running Time Trial Performance, a Systematic Review and Meta-Analysis. And Joe and I were kind of talking before the podcast started that sometimes these, from like our coaching perspective, again, we're not scientists, so we're not trying to come in here and tell you like the did they use the best scientific method and all this crap. We really try to look at these studies and we're like, hey, how is this applicable for a garage gym athlete? What's the coach's perspective? How did their programming suck because they're not a coach or a programmer, they're a scientist? These are the kind of things that we're looking at. And it's actually a little bit harder with systematic review and a meta-analysis because the main thing that they are talking about is the methodology they use to select studies. And to be honest, we don't really care. All we know is they started with a lot of studies. They have a weed out process. It got us down to, what was it, like 21 studies, something around that. I think in the 20s, somewhere around there. But ultimately, we're still trying to take a look at this from the coach's perspective and how is this useful to garage gym athletes. And so in this one, pretty interesting because I didn't even know there would be an argument here. And what they're looking at is not only, hey, is heavy resistance training beneficial for a runner, or is plyometric training beneficial for a runner? They wanted to see which one is more beneficial for a runner. And I'm just going to jump to the conclusion and some of their key points because they lay it very clear out in the study. But then we can kind of talk about the coaching perspective and then anything you found interesting from the study, Joe. So their conclusion from the abstract, without even diving into the full text, was heavy resistance training, especially with nearly maximal loads, may be superior to plyometric training in improving running economy and running time trial performance. In addition, running economy appears to be improved better when training is performed for a longer period in both heavy resistance and plyometric training. And what they're saying in that last sentence there is you can't do heavy resistance training for 3 days and get better running time trial or running economy. You have to do a program. And I think it was 10 weeks or longer, which is one of their key points. So their 3 main key points from the study were heavy resistance training as an adjunct to running training would be more effective in improving running economy and running time trial performance than plyometric training. Resistance training with nearly maximal load, so greater than 90% of 1 rep max or less than or equal to 4 rep max, would be more effective to improve running economy. And then lastly, heavy resistance and plyometric training should be conducted over 10, greater than or equal to 10 weeks to better improve running economy, which I thought it's awesome that that's a takeaway, but also kind of funny at the same time. Again, going back to a coaching perspective, like I would never, there's almost nothing you can implement and I'll go, yeah, you'll be better by the end of the week. Like that never happens. Like you have to do things for 12 weeks. You have to do things for like 6 weeks just to see a result. So overall, they're saying resistance training is better than plyometric training. A lot more that we could talk about here though. What were your thoughts on the study, Joe?
I liked a lot about the study. I think one of the coolest things was that they looked at running economy, which and they also looked at time trials, but I think running economy was their main focus, which I think has I guess we don't do as much endurance type studies, but I liked seeing it because just just being much more of an efficient runner. I mean, you're using less energy. What's going to make you a better runner by using less energy to go to the same speed that you were doing? And a lot of zone 2, like if you do a lot of zone 2, this could help with that. But I like that it pulling in strength and then being very specific about the strength, not just strength resistance training, which could be very, very broad. It's heavy resistance training,
Yeah.
over 70% max, and even better if it's over 90% max. So the heavier you lift, the better running economy you're going to get, which seems kind of crazy, kind of and very eye opening. I'm sure for a lot of people, we've sort of been on the that path for a while, but it's just really cool to see it broken down like this and in a meta analysis. So I really liked the aim for it, and I also liked that this was geared toward experienced runners. So it was middle and long distance runners, not untrained people, not necessarily recreational type people where you're going to give them anything and they can have improvements. This was actually experienced runners, and they even took it a step further and measured them in 3 different levels of experience. So level 1 was recreational runners with like under 2 years experience. Then there were level 2, which was like collegiate athletes and runners with like 2 to 5 years experience, and then there's like international athletes, and they looked at how the heavy strength training and plyometrics did versus those specific groups as well, and it even paid more dividends. The more experience they had, the better results they were having from the heavy resistance training. So a lot of cool stuff with the study that I really liked, and that yes, they were very specific on, yeah, doing a 8 week strength program is good, but really you need to do minimum 10 weeks. 12 weeks or greater and continuous is the best. And a quote I pulled out was, the suggestion that the continuation of training over a long period is needed to further enhance running economy may be especially true for highly trained runners. So specifically the takeaway of keep doing resistance or heavy training, especially for the more experienced runners, is a really well, it was a really good takeaway.
Yeah. And I think if you would have asked me, just, hey, what's your own hypothesis, having heard the study, like, what do you think the conclusion was? I don't think I would have landed on basically max effort training, which, if you listen to the podcast this past week on the different strength methods, I wouldn't have said max effort. The max effort method would have been the most advantageous for runners, to be honest. The more I think about it, the more sense I can kind of make out of it, because when you think about when you're running, that's a lot of impact. It is definitely more on the muscular endurance side, especially when you go through that continuum of beginner to advanced. Like, some people, when they first start running, they might actually have a muscle that's too fatigued, and that's the reason they cannot continue running. Like, maybe their calf is too fatigued, their hip flexors, could even be quads for some people, depending if there's like an elevation where you're running. And so I thought, that's pretty interesting. So if we're looking at that as more muscular endurance training, it would make sense to have a more well-rounded strength program to bring in the max effort method. But I do think that it's crazy that that's what it was, because I would have thought you would need to train more muscle battery, in that, just being kind of the hypertrophy rep ranges.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, my own programming and coach's brain is like, hey, well, you don't want to rip muscles apart multiple times throughout the week. Like, you don't want to do a high volume hypertrophy leg session today and then run 5 miles tomorrow. And like, soreness out of the equation, it's just not going to be as good, because there's too much muscle damage. And then if you're putting too much, you're pushing your body too far over the edge, and your ability to recover is getting less and less, you're not going to see the results that you want from the program. And so that also makes sense that from a volume standpoint, it's just like, hey, let's hit the CNS as hard as we can. Let's go 1 rep max, 90%, less than 4 reps, those kind of things. And then that will improve your overall running economy and improve your running time trials. So I think a big takeaway here, just on that part for garage gym athletes, if you're a runner, like, make sure you're getting in that heavy training. Make sure you're doing it a couple times per week. I think 1 to 2 times per week. Again, max effort method is not something I like to play around with at too high of a frequency, but definitely 1 or 2 times a week, you want to be getting that in, and it can definitely, from the literature, it can make you a better runner. And I think this has been like an ongoing thing. There are a few, I think that they're finally getting killed, like these like myths in fitness, but like runners not doing strength training, that's very common, right? And slowly that's been chipped away at. Like, I think most runners, if they're not doing strength training, it's not because they don't think it's beneficial. It's really just because they do not want to. But at this point, I feel like enough people know that if you're a runner, you should be doing strength training. And if you're wondering what type, well, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, needs to be heavy, it needs to be hard. And we program that stuff a lot, so you could be better there. So make sure that you're getting the heavy training is one of the takeaways from the study.
Yeah. And it doesn't even need to be like a ton of volume. Like, you don't need to go out and have like 20, 30 minutes of squatting, doing a bunch of sets. You could just be warming up and work up to like a heavy set, heavy 1 or 2, like really heavy sets, and then call it a day kind of thing. So you don't need to be putting in a shit ton of volume just to just to train for the resistance training to get the benefits. And this reminds me of a study we did a year, might have been like 2 years by now, when it looked at I think it was power lifters in their off season were to maintain their strength. Instead of like following a high volume training, they would just work up to a heavy 1, heavy 2, heavy 3, and then once they got to that heavy load, they dropped the percentage, like whatever that was. They want 75% of that load and did like one last almost like near max effort set, 2 reps in reserve, and then that was it. So they just worked up to a really heavy set, took the weight down, did one last set, and then they were done. So like a decrease in volume, keeping the load high without overtraining, and then you're still able to go about your other training. So it's really not super hard. You don't need too much to it to see the benefits.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of training at these top ends, whether it's glycolytic and conditioning or 1 rep max stuff in lifting. You don't need a lot of volume. You don't need a ton to like see the results. You need to get to the percentage or the effort that you're supposed to see the results. Now, the second thing I wanted to hit on, I just want to be clear that this was a versus one or the other. So what they were looking at was heavy resistance training versus plyometric training, and it's more like which one edged out the other, but it's not one is effective and one is ineffective. Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes when you read a study like this, that might be your takeaway, or just like your brain might kind of default to that, because I know my brain defaults to that when I just hear it, but that's not what it's saying. And if you read more about it and you actually look at the results, like we're just talking about, like these are marginal, overall heavy resistance training was better per all the studies that they looked at, but plyometric wasn't necessarily bad. It's not like it's bad for runners, and a lot of runners have been doing plyometric training for years to improve a lot of different things. I do think plyometric training in general, you're more on that speed continuum of strength. It's just a little bit more advanced to me. Like plyometric training, if you're going back into those buckets of skill level, I don't think people should start with plyometric training. Like I just don't think it's necessary. And I feel like some coaches like try and put in plyometric type training into their programs to like impress the athlete that they're programming for or they're training, and kind of like add this mysterious, like, oh, why are we doing a drop jump? It's like you don't really need to be doing those things, and you really probably won't see a lot of benefit from that until later on, because I think if you take a beginner athlete and you're trying to throw all these things in their program, we have plyometric training, which is relatively hard on the body. It's higher impact most of the time. And then we're doing run volume. And then you want to add heavy resistance training. You're going to burn out a beginner athlete pretty fast when we're looking at a well-rounded program. So I wouldn't worry too much about plyometrics unless you are more at that advanced stage. You are looking to get more speed into your workouts. Plyometric training can be a definite good start for those type of things, but it's not one or the other. And I just want to be real clear on that. Like if you're a runner, add plyometrics, add heavy resistance training. If you could only pick one, seems like heavy resistance training might edge out plyometrics. But again, do what you enjoy and see results from it. But all of our athletes, if you're in our programming, you're doing a little bit of all of it. You're getting the running in, you're getting some heavy lifting in. And some, we don't do as much like plyometrics, but we do amongst that continuum, we hit speed in the strength continuum, like I hit on the podcast last week, which is very similar to your body's ability to produce force. We're always focusing on that to some degree. And so you're not going to be missing that in our programming either.
Yep. Even Endure has pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah. You need it. It's really good for athletes. Anything else on this study that you want to hit on?
No, it was pretty good. They wrapped it up pretty nicely.
Okay, awesome, man. Well, let's dive into you. We'll just do some quick updates, man. I don't feel like we've done it in a while.
Lay on the couch real quick.
Yeah. How'd that make you feel? Yeah. So
put me on the spot like that.
how are things, man? Give us an update to life training, all that good stuff.
Yeah, there's actually been a lot going on my side when it comes to health and fitness. I've been doing counting macros for the last 3 weeks, I think, because I feel like once a year, and it seems like it always happens at the beginning of the year, just coincidentally. I feel like once a year I need to do a macro check and a nutrition check, and every year there's something new that I'm like, oh man, I'm way under on this, or I'm way over on this kind of thing. So it's really good to kind of do that to refresh, seeing the quantities that you're eating and the weight and what your proportions kind of need to be from that standpoint, and just how macros and calories has changed. And my goals have changed. I'm starting to try and I want to slim down a little bit, but not like going into a big weight loss cut or anything. I just want to dial it back a little bit and then go forward with some other goals that I'm working on. So I got that going on. I'm also being I was getting to the point last year where, like, I've always have an idea of certain areas in my fitness where it's either lacking because of me, whether it's I'm just not putting in the amount of time or effort toward it. So I did that the last couple of weeks. I've been trying to assess it, and one of them was sort of my workout intensity, getting into higher aerobic, anaerobic heart rate zones. So I've been engineering at least one workout a week to where I'm forcing myself to really kick it into high gear. And it started off being running sprints, but it's been going really well. I've actually been getting up to zone 5, which is super rare for me.
Yeah.
So just forcing myself to get up into those higher intensities, because I mean, as my title here says, zone 2 lover. I've done a crap ton of zone 2 over the years, especially the last few months. And it seems like I would just default to, if I want to do some conditioning, I'm just like, oh, well, I'm just going to do zone 2. And it's just been comfortable and easy and just kind of something to do. So I really need to push it into get into those higher intensities, especially because in about a month or so, I've got my Air Force PT test. Not that I'm ever worried about that, but I just a mile and a half when you're really trying, I just want those to suck less because I have pretty much a standard time of what I like to run in. So yeah, I kind of nailing that for my what I'm missing on my training, and partially what's helping with that as well. The third thing is I went way back into the archives of EO3 blog post on your Better Human Shot with
Mm-hmm.
beets and some other fruits and stuff. I did a little different, but basically I made my own pre-workout, and it had beets, an apple, a blood orange because they were local and from our farmers market, and tart cherry juice. And I just blended it, and I basically have a tablespoon. I just before I work, 30 minutes before I work, I just take a big old heaping spoonful, and then I'm good to go. So 30 minutes later, I feel like there's parts of my workout, and it could completely be a placebo. I'll be honest, but I don't really care as long as it's working. I just think there's so many antioxidants, and even I guess the quick sugars that are readily available too for that. I think I've noticed a difference in some of my more intense workouts that I can go to those gears, even if it's not the intervals, just normal strength stuff like supersets. I feel like I can push it a little bit harder while on that. So overall, I think everything's going really well. Health and fitness wise, I'm still doing my PT stuff for my hips. I think I'm starting to do something. I'm going to try and implement something else later, but I didn't do all of these things all at once. I didn't start, first day of the year going, okay, on my list, I'm going to start all of these things all at once. I counted macros for like 2 weeks or so. Then I made my pre-workout thing and I started having that. And then a couple weeks later, I started programming my workouts to focus on the intensity. So, kind of like habit forming we've talked before, even though not really necessarily habits, I just wanted to focus on one thing at a time before I moved on to the next. And now it's all just kind of happening.
That's awesome. That's the best way to build habits. And I do think there's enough scientific research that we've covered that your pre-workout shot is actually effective and not all placebo. I mean, there could be some placebo.
Yeah.
There's always a little placebo.
Yeah.
There's a little
We've covered
placebo in
beats a few
everything.
times. Beats and tart cherry juice a few times.
Like I think if you're just following an exercise program, there's a little bit of placebo. You know what I mean? Like there's the effectiveness of the program, but there's also just the mentality of the fact that you're following an actual structured program that it just helps your brain a little bit more add structure to the results, and I think that's always there. But it's also good to hear that you're adding in some intensity. And I think if I had to grade us on something on information we've been giving over the last couple of years is I've harped really hard on hitting zone 2, but I think I've always put a little bit too little of an asterisk on like the zone 5 and the zone 4. Like you still need that. And you need a decent amount, like 10 to 30% of your training, depending on what your goals are, should probably be in zone 4 to zone 5. If we're looking at like total training time or intervals or whatever, how you want to break down that 10 to 30%, it's not a lot of actual time spent in those zones, but compared to everything else you're doing, because if all you ever do is zone 2, I mean, to be honest, you're not doing much. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're building this huge aerobic, the pyramid to the base. You got a huge base that you're building, but you're never building up. And the only way to build up is to add in those more intensity things. And I'm not just saying this for you. I'm just saying it for anybody who's listening. Like, you got to put in the hard efforts occasionally. And for me, what's, honestly taking care of that most of the time is Meet Yourself Saturday, because most Meet Yourself Saturdays for me are going to be zone 4, zone 5, where I'm in there. And then, to be honest, if I did lower intensity the rest of the week, that Saturday training session can push me over the edge for most of what I would need for that week or even that month if I'm doing that 4 times in a month. So it's something to just keep in mind. I know not everybody does all the Meet Yourself Saturdays, but you might want to throw them in there if you're looking to add that intensity or do something like what Joe's doing. So for me, updates, not a lot has changed. Still trying to fit in like my lower intensity zone 2 runs during some kids practices, because I have like 14 hours of practices every single week, which is fine. I actually really enjoy what we're doing, but just trying to like utilize my time wisely. But I would say a big push for me this year is 2 things. These are kind of goal oriented. I'm also tracking them. But ever since I got injured, and it was the most serious injury I've had, and the reason I say that is because it just was the longest recovery time. Any other time I've been gotten injured or something, a little tweak here, it's normally gone pretty fast. It's that last one lasted the longest I've ever had. And so one thing I'm paying attention to this year is my actual work to recovery ratio. And so if I train for 5 hours per week or 6 hours per week, I'm trying to, at a minimum, get half of that in recovery time. So what does this look like? Well, if I were to do 60 minutes of training today, and then I did 20 minutes of mobility and stretching, and then also something like the sauna, I'm at 40 minutes now. So I actually overshot, or say I did 20 minutes of the sauna and 10 minutes of stretching and mobility. Now I'm at 30. I'm at that 2 to 1. So training 2 and then recovery 1 is what I'm looking to do. And I'm actually tracking this more than I ever have in the past, because I'm actually wanting to see where that lands. I've never actually looked at it. Like, I've always done these things, but when you're actually tracking it, it changes things a little bit more. Because if you were to ask me how often am I stretching and doing mobility, I would say, oh yeah, I'm probably doing it 5-6 days a week. But in reality, maybe I'm doing it like 6 or 7 days one week and then 2 or 3 the next week. So I'm actually tracking these things on a calendar is a big thing that I'm doing. And I'm trying to get 50% of whatever my training time is in as recovery. And to be honest, I felt really good doing this. I felt honestly the best I've felt in a long time. And I'm going to keep doing this. And my goal is to do this for the rest of Q1, so the end of March. And then I want to start taking on some much harder training, moving into late spring, early summer when the weather's better. And also, like, I have not been going as hard as I want to. It's been very challenging to me. I've brought some of that intensity back, but I want to bring it up way, way more. But I want to make sure that I'm recovering well. So that's part of that. So that's a big thing I've been hitting on this year, tracking my actual training to recovery. And then another thing, I've kind of talked about this on the podcast, but I'm trying to take my training very seriously. And what I mean by that is the fact that I have trained so much and so often that I take it for granted what I'm actually doing on a daily basis. So I'm like, yeah, I trained, whatever. Like, drink a glass of water, move on. We got other shit to do. You know, I'm trying to not be that way anymore. I'm trying to be very serious about my lead up to a training session and then what happens after a training session, because I feel like I've been in a good place with that, but over the last year, I feel like I've not been in a good place with that. Like, I've been getting the training in, but I wasn't as focused on the fact that this is a huge physiological and psychological event in my day. It lasts about 1 hour, and there's very little like prep and um, post work being done. So I'm already doing the recovery stuff. So you might be like wondering, okay, so what are you doing? Well, I'm making sure that my nutrition leading into workouts is really on point. And what that's been for me lately is I brought back my shake. So I've been doing like the same ish shake for a long time, but now that's my pre workout, similar to like what you're doing with your shot. I'm trying to have a shake, not right before, but there's so many like slow digesting complex carbohydrates in my shake and fiber and everything else that it's just a really solid pre workout shake. I try to have it like an hour to an hour and a half before, and I felt great going into that. I'm focusing a lot on my warm up, making sure that my warm up is very intentional, that I'm getting the heart rate to a good effort. Like, I feel very warm and ready to go. And then on the back end of that, I'm cooling down, which is honestly almost non existent probably for the last several years. Like, when I finish a training session, I'm pretty much done, like moving on. And so I'm trying to actually put in a cool down, which I've been pretty successful at doing a cool down, making sure I'm getting water, electrolytes right after in like a large dose, and then also protein within 30 to 45 minutes and more complex carbohydrates. And this is all like training 101, guys. This is nothing groundbreaking or like, oh, wow, I've never heard that you should do that. But like I said, as someone who just like has done this stuff for so long, I just kind of lost the fact that it was a big deal. You know what I'm saying? It's like I bet an NFL player, their first time that they ever play on a Sunday, their like hands are shaking and they're like, holy shit, and then I bet Tom Brady by his last one is like doesn't even care. It's just like a football game, right? And yeah, that's me comparing myself to Tom Brady because we're basically the same. And no, in all reality, I know you hate Tom Brady, but
Oh, I don't care anymore.
he's also the best, but or was. But anyway, I'm not a Tom Brady fan. All I'm trying to say is you can end up taking these things for granted. So if you are in that category, you're similar to me. You've been training for a long time, but you've kind of lost like, hey, let's just get some of the basics. Let's make sure we have really good warm up, pre workout meal, post workout meal, cool down. And then on top of that, making sure we're getting all the recovery stuff in. I think it's really going to amplify the rest of 2023. And so far, things have been going great, and I'm feeling great. And I just want to keep pushing down this road. So those are the two biggest things for me, training wise and life wise. I've just been focusing a little bit differently than I have in the past, and kind of bringing it back to the basics. In all honesty,
It's kind of funny. Both of our updates and what we have going on are kind of on the same wavelength of we both realized we needed some change. And so we made some changes, but we just added small changes here and there that made the overall picture that much better. We didn't completely rewrite the script and start fresh and go, you know what, I'm just going to go crazy and do this completely change my training program and my routine and everything. It's just like, well, I'm just going to do this here, this here, and this here, and then in a couple of months we'll see how it goes. Like, and go on your recovery thing too. That's probably my the fourth thing that I'm going to be working on this year is whether it's a sixth day of just and I'm probably asking you guys in around that, like, what's a good like either all-night yoga or stretching routine that I might incorporate on a sixth day for sixth or seventh training day, like on the weekend to do. And one of my days, typically I'll go to base to do my squat day, and then I'll spend 30 minutes or 30 minutes extra at the gym because I instead of being at my home gym, I'm there at the gym. And since I'm there, I'm going to maximize my time and make myself go through a full stretching routine, use some things that I don't necessarily have mobility wise at home. So that's another thing that I'm working on, but it's just Yeah, but whenever you feel like you need to change, you don't need to do anything completely crazy. Just add some things here and there. Maybe put another couple of boxes to check on your week or your routine, and the change can still come. And yeah, just think about how you want to be in a couple of months.
Yeah, and it really is all the little things. Like, I'm very confident in the programming, and like the only time it takes a lot of self reflection to know, like, okay, what weren't you doing when you got hurt? And I mean, it's been a long time since I had the back problem, but like it it's not what I was doing. It's honestly what I wasn't doing. And I know I've talked about it, but I just the training time, there was a lot more training involved when I was chasing other goals, like actual training time in a day. And so I just started to cut recovery out. And that was a slow burn process over several months to where I wasn't focused on recovery. I wasn't focused on mobility. I wasn't focused on warming up. I wasn't focused on cooling down. I wasn't focused on post workout nutrition. I was really just focusing on getting the number one thing done, which was the training. And when the training is as hard and as intense as I was, like, if I was coaching somebody else doing the same stuff, I would have called them an idiot several months in advance of where I was at. And sometimes it takes, that's why I think it's good for a coach to have a coach, just to like look at these things. Where am I being stupid? Because it's hard to do that self-assessment sometimes, but that's ultimately what I did and where I got. I was like, okay, what happened? Like, let's really break this down. And that's what kind of pushed my goals. And yeah, it is kind of funny. Like what you're saying, I am tracking these things. I'm using an app to track it. So it's actually like um, a new habit, if you will. Some of these things kind of are, but they're so tiny. Like, it's just a bunch of little things I'm tracking. But what I want to see on a calendar when I'm done is I want to look back at a calendar and see, like, okay, over the last 30 days, how many warm ups and cool downs did you did? How many pre-workout, post-workout meals? Like, were you on top of those things? All these kind of different things. I want to be able to look at a graph. That way I'm not just like recalling, like, oh yeah, I think I did pretty good last month. I want to be like, you only did that 18 times and you trained 27. Like, there's a gap. You need to fix the gap. And so that's what I'm being a little bit more intentional this year. And I've been that way since January 1st of this year, of like really looking at those things.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we will get out of here. Well, I guess I'll briefly hit on the workout. I think it's Dia de los Muertos for the Meet Yourself Saturday. I don't know if we're going to keep doing these in the podcast. Maybe you guys can let us know if you think we should keep briefing them, but it's in the app. If you follow the training, you can always see, and we have the brief, but Dia de los Muertos.
Nope.
It's not?
When this publishes, nope, it will be, because we're going into Dia is this week, the week of recording.
Oh yeah, so it's 60 meters for max distance.
Yeah, which kind of lines up well with the study.
Yeah. So either way, I don't know if we'll keep Meet Yourself Saturdays in the briefs or in the podcast. You guys let us know. Let us know in the new community. Just full circle there all the way. Let us know in the new community if you want us to keep briefing the Meet Yourself Saturdays there. But joke. Yeah, full circle. So many dad jokes and things going on there, but it's 60 minutes for max meters. Not a lot to talk about anyway, but do challenge yourself mentally there. But that's it for this podcast. Again, going back to the announcements, a lot of stuff going. Biggest thing we ask for you guys right now is just get into the community if you're not. And if you're not, ask us, hey, why am I not in the community? We will get you in the community. We will get you there. You just need to either reach out to us or take action on emails we've already sent or something like that. We already have hundreds of athletes in there, and we want to get a lot more of our athletes in there because we know a lot of people haven't taken that action, and some people just might not be into external communities, but give us a try for 30 days. I think you'll really like it. And for anybody listening who does want to give something a try, you can go to garagegymathlete.com, sign up for a free trial, check things out. For everyone in the community, thank you for following the programming. 2023 is the year of simplifying everything at Garage Gym Athlete, and that's what we're working on. Community is step one. Remember, if you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you. Athlete Podcast. If you want to learn more, go to garagegymathlete.com. You can learn about our training, Let us send you a copy of our book, The Garage Gym Athlete, or you can even get featured on the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. Thanks for listening.